In 2018, the first image was simple. Kim Jung Hyun standing beside Seo Hyun at the press conference for Time, looking strangely cold, uncooperative, almost irritated by the role he was supposed to sell. At the time, the moment already felt awkward. But awkwardness is easy to bury in celebrity culture. Korea has seen countless bad press conferences, stiff smiles, and actors who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. What made this one survive was not the clip itself, but what happened 3 years later, when the past returned with a different meaning. In April 2021, Dispatch published a report connecting Kim Jung Hyun's behavior during time to text messages exchanged with Seo Ye Ji, who was said to be his girlfriend at the time. The report compared the original script with the aired version and said multiple scenes involving physical contact had been altered or removed. The leaked messages, as reported by Soompi, included repeated instructions to act stiff, avoid romance, avoid physical contact, and even distance himself from female staff. Suddenly, the old footage no longer looked like one actor having a bad day. It looked like evidence. That was the violence of the scandal. Not because the public had discovered a crime, but because they had discovered a new way to read her face. Seo Ye Ji had been loved for looking elegant, controlled, and almost too self-possessed to ever lose composure. But now that same control was being reinterpreted as something colder, darker, and more invasive. She did not just look poised anymore. She looked to many viewers like the invisible force behind someone else's humiliation. And once that idea entered public imagination, it spread with terrifying speed. The scandal was no longer about whether Kim Jung Hyun had behaved badly. He already had. The question became far more cinematic and far more dangerous. What kind of woman could turn distance into obedience, and obedience into public disgrace? That is why Seo Ye Ji's scandal hit with such force. It was not a single accusation landing on a neutral image. It was a perfect collision between a public fantasy and a private narrative ugly enough to stain it forever. On April 13th, her agency admitted that she and Kim Jung Hyun had indeed been dating, but denied that she was the cause of his behavior on Time. They argued that the messages reflected a lover's quarrel between two actors jealous about physical scenes, not a master plan of control. The same statement also said rumors about fabricated education and school violence were false, while apologizing for the delay in responding and for her absence from the recalled press conference that day. But by then, the scandal had already mutated. It was no longer just about what happened between two people. It had become a collapse of atmosphere. Her absence from the recalled event made the whole thing feel even more dramatic, as if the woman at the center of the storm had vanished just as the public most wanted to look at her. Then Kim Jung Hyun released his own handwritten apology on April 14th, taking responsibility for his behavior during Time and apologizing to Seo Hyun, the staff, and others affected. That apology mattered, but not because it solved the scandal. It did the opposite. It made the wound feel more real. The press conference was real. The hurt was real. The fallout was real. And Seo Ye Ji, whether fairly or unfairly, was now fixed inside that story. This is the fracture at the center of her arc. A woman admired for her discipline and mystery became compelling for the exact opposite reason. She was no longer the actress who looked too refined to slip. She became the actress whose elegance now felt suspicious, whose calm looked rehearsed, and whose beauty suddenly carried the chill of possible manipulation. Not a scandal that proved everything, but a scandal that changed the meaning of everything the public thought it saw in her. Before the scandal turned Seo Ye Ji into a woman people argued about, she was first the kind of actress people stared at. Her rise did not begin with warmth, it began with distance. She entered the industry in 2013, first through commercials, and then through the long-running sitcom Potato Star 2013 QR3. Before moving through period dramas, thrillers, and fantasy series like Diary of a Night Watchman, Last, and Moram School. That early path matters because it gave her something more useful than instant fame: shape. By the time the public really began paying attention, Seo Ye Ji already felt unusually formed. She did not have the familiar softness of an actress introduced as the next sweetheart. Her face carried a stricter kind of beauty. Sharp, restrained, elegant, almost too composed. Even in supporting roles, she looked less like someone trying to be liked and more like someone the camera simply could not ignore. That difference became her advantage. In 2017, she took her first leading film role in Another Way, then drew stronger attention in the thriller Save Me, where she was praised as a new thriller queen. In that phase, the public fantasy around her started to harden. Not cheerful, not easily readable, but magnetic, precisely because she seemed self-contained. Seo Ye Ji was not rising as a comforting star. She was rising as an atmosphere. And once a performer becomes atmosphere, the public stops watching only the roles. They begin reading the person through the aura. That aura became a myth by 2018-2020. Lawless Lawyer turned into a commercial hit and one of the highest-rated Korean cable dramas, giving her more mainstream visibility without softening her edge. But the real transformation came with It's Okay to Not Be Okay in 2020. In that series, Seo Ye Ji played Ko Moon Young, a best-selling children's book author with a personality disorder, a role that fit her image almost too perfectly. The character was glamorous, emotionally dangerous, difficult, wounded, and impossible to reduce into something simple. Critics responded strongly. Wikipedia's summary of coverage notes praise from outlets including The Hindu and The New York Times, which called the series one of the best international shows of 2020 and described Seo Ye Ji's performance as mesmerizing. Just as important, the show brought her a substantial rise in popularity in Korea and internationally. This is the key to why her later fall felt so dramatic. The public did not merely like Seo Ye Ji. They believed in the precision of her image. She looked like a woman who had mastered herself, too elegant to be sloppy, too controlled to be petty, too rarefied to be caught in something ugly and ordinary. That is the fantasy part 1 shattered. Because once the 2021 scandal arrived, people did not only question her behavior, they went back and reread the very qualities they once admired. Her calm stopped looking refined and started looking cold. Her distance stopped looking mysterious and started looking calculated. Her perfection stopped feeling aspirational and began to feel dangerous. That is why this part of the story matters so much. Before Seo Ye Ji became controversial, she first had to become almost mythic, and myths do not break quietly. The most damaging scandals are not always the ones with the strongest proof. They are the ones that make everything else suddenly look possible. That is what happened to Seo Ye Ji after the Kim Jung Hyun controversy exploded. The problem was no longer just one set of messages or one old press conference clip. The problem was that the scandal opened a door, and once that door was open, every rumor that had once felt distant or ignorable rushed in at the same time. Reports and online accusations began to pile up around her name. School violence, mistreatment of staff, and questions over her academic background. The Korea Times wrote in April 2021 that she had been accused of school bullying, mistreating staff, and falsifying her educational background, while her agency denied the school bullying claims and explained that although she had been admitted to a university in Spain, she ultimately chose not to attend. The same report also said the agency remained silent regarding allegations that she had mistreated staff. That silence mattered. In celebrity scandal, denial can slow panic, and apology can redirect it. Silence often does something worse. It lets the public imagination keep writing. By then, Seo Ye Ji was no longer being judged one accusation at a time. She was being reassembled into a single dark character, not simply elegant, but arrogant, not simply composed, but controlling, not simply private, but cruel. Even if every allegation did not carry the same weight, they merged in public memory into one atmosphere of suspicion. That is the moment an actress stops being discussed as a person and starts being consumed as a symbol. And the symbol forming around Seo Ye Ji in 2021 was devastating. A woman whose perfection no longer looked enviable, but threatening. What changed most was not just her reputation, but the meaning of her aura. Before the scandal, her distance had helped make her magnetic. After the scandal, that same distance began to look like emotional coldness. Before, her beauty felt sculpted and rare. After, it started to feel severe. Before, her restraint looked like discipline. After, it looked like control. That is the cruel transformation at the center of Seo Ye Ji's story. The qualities that built her myth became the same qualities that darkened it. The fallout quickly moved beyond public opinion into her career. In May 2021, Soompi reported that she would no longer star in the upcoming drama Island following the controversy. Months later, when she prepared to return with Eve, the comeback itself was already framed through scandal, not through art. And in February 2022, more than 10 months after the original Dispatch report, Seo Ye Ji released a formal apology of her own. The timing of that apology says everything about how long the shadow lasted. This was no longer a quick tabloid fire. It had become a stain that followed her into silence, into casting decisions, and into the public's memory of her face. That is why Part 3 matters so much in her arc. The scandal did not only accuse Seo Ye Ji of something, it changed the lens through which people saw her. Once that happened, every old strength of her image, elegance, mystery, emotional reserve, stopped protecting her and started working against her. Not because the public suddenly learned who she really was, but because they had found a darker story that fit her image even better than the beautiful one did. When the noise finally began to thin out, Seo Ye Ji did not return in the dramatic way a scandal narrative usually promises. She did not come back as a woman fully redeemed or as a star who had erased the stain and stepped neatly back into the light. Her return was quieter than that, and in some ways more revealing. After Eve in 2022, the next phase of her public image was defined less by a big acting triumph than by careful re-entry. In April 2024, she launched a personal Instagram account and directly told fans on her fan cafe that she had created it for them. A small move, but an important one. It meant that after years of being looked at mostly through scandal headlines, she was trying to control the frame again in the most modern way possible, not through a role, but through presence. 2 months later, in June 2024, she signed with a new agency, Sublime, which publicly said it would support her activities and create a new synergy with her. Then, in December 2024, she announced her first-ever fan meeting, Fedora, nearly 11 years after debut. That detail matters more than it seems. Fan meetings are not just schedules. They are rituals of reacceptance. They are where the industry quietly tests whether an image can still hold affection after it has been broken. And in January 2025, her agency also announced legal action against malicious commenters, another sign that the after period of Seo Ye Ji's scandal was not peaceful closure, but active management of the shadow left behind. Her current chapter, then, is not about pretending the scandal never happened. It is about learning how to stand in public again while knowing the old narrative still follows her. That is what makes her ending more interesting than a simple comeback story. As of May 2025, Seo Ye Ji was still only in talks for the thriller drama Forest of Humans, which means her future on screen remained something the industry was considering, not fully restoring. The ambiguity suits her story. Because Seo Ye Ji was never a star people loved for feeling easy. She was loved because she looked difficult in a beautiful way, too elegant, too self-contained, too finely controlled to ever seem ordinary. The scandal destroyed the innocence of that image, but it did not destroy its power. If anything, it changed the flavor of it forever. Now when people look at Seo Ye Ji, they no longer see only mystery. They see memory inside the mystery. They see the old aura, but darkened. The beauty is still there. The voice is still there. The poise is still there. But none of it feels untouched anymore. And maybe that is the real ending to her arc. Not that she vanished. Not that she triumphed. But that she survived as a different kind of image. Still compelling, still watchable, still strangely magnetic, yet permanently marked by the moment the public stopped admiring her calm and started fearing what it might mean.